The first Egyptians established arable fields, mainly for spelt, barley, and date palm, because their meals were based on bread and beer. Cattle, pigs, sheep, and goats were reared, but most often tasty and nutritious fish of various species supplied by the Nile was eaten. Continuously developing craftsmanship supported the development of agriculture and breeding. Thanks to the brickyards, which produced sun-dried mud bricks, the local population could build their first houses and workshops. In the early period of Egypt's development, also bakeries and breweries can be considered as one of the most important workshops. In order to gain hard-to-reach goods, the Egyptians established business contacts with their neighbors or colonized areas where they could extract valuable minerals, metals, and stone building material. For this reason, sailing was developed and the necessary ports built, thanks to which the Nile became a nourishing artery, facilitating the exchange of goods and the receipt of raw materials from remote quarries. From the earliest times, an important aspect of the life of the Egyptian city was to defend it. As a result, defensive walls were built and armies strengthened to protect city dwellers from marauders who would dare to resist the will of the pharaoh. Min, the first king of Egypt, was told by the priests that he had ensured Memphis against the floods of the Nile by building the dam. So if to this mine, as they tell, the first king of Egypt, the fenced arm of the Nile turned into a permanent land, he established there a city, which is now called Memphis, and dug a lake around it. From the outside, from the river to the north and to the west, because to the east, the Nile itself is the border. In addition, he built the temple of Hephaestus in that city, which is great and worthy of mention. In this way, the Greek historian Herodotus, who lived in the 5th century BC, reported on the beginnings of the town of Memphis. The aforementioned King Min is called in other sources the mythical Menes, while the Egyptian texts call him Narmer or Aha. Both rulers have deserved for their country. Narmer, the last pharaoh of the Zero dynasty, united Upper and Lower Egypt, and his son Aha, founder of the first dynasty, began to build one of the most important capitals of ancient Egypt, the city of Memphis. Memphis was the administrative, political, and religious center of the first Lower Egyptian nome. The city was the second after thinnest capital of Egypt and the residence of the pharaohs at the very beginning of Egyptian history, that is, in the early dynastic period and in the Old Kingdom. The high rank of the city was emphasized by the fact that the rulers kept their palaces here even in later times, when the capital of the kingdom was another center. Memphis was one of the largest religious centers of ancient Egypt. From the earliest times, there was a great sanctuary of the god Ptah, called Het-Ka-Ptah, or K-Ptah Temple. Interestingly, according to some Egyptologists, the name of this place of worship was the source of the Greek name of the country, Egyptus. The human figure of Ptah was identified with the old deity of the land called Tetanenet. Therefore, Ptah was considered a host and the incarnation of the vital power of nature. In turn, the symbol of the deity, the bull Apis, was connected with fertility. From the earliest times, Memphis was considered to be the center of craftsmanship and artistic production, which was supervised by priests from the Ptah temple. God himself was considered the guardian of arts and crafts. Ptah, together with the goddess Sekhmet and Nefertum, formed the Memphis Holy Trinity. Other deities were also worshipped in the city, and each of them had its own temple. The western part of the city was ruled by the god Sokar, who became the guardian of the Memphis necropolis. Memphis was one of the most popular and most populated areas of Egypt. It was inhabited by a truly cosmopolitan community, which was mainly due to the growing foreign trade, in which an important role played mainly Memphis workshops and port. Even in later times, the most important Egyptian city was Thebes. For foreigners, the symbol of Egypt was Memphis. Unfortunately, the city was almost completely destroyed in ancient times. Already in the times of the New Kingdom, sculptures decorating temples and palaces were taken away to decorate other places of worship, especially those located in the Nile Delta. The buildings of Memphis, including the Great Ptah Temple, were dismantled and used for the construction of Muslim Cairo. Luckily, the Memphis necropolis met with a different fate. Its size, 30 kilometers long, proves the size and importance of the city. The necropolis includes cemeteries in Dashur, Saqqara, Abu Sir, Zoyat El Arayan, Giza, and Abu Roash. It happened that particular quarters of Memphis, which adjoined the royal pyramid complexes, borrowed their names. In this way, during the 18th dynasty, the Egyptian name of the city, Mennefer, Permanent Beauty, which was originally the name of the Pyramid of Pepi I, 6th dynasty in Saqqara, was created. Mennefer, in the Greek version, is still known today as Memphis. The earliest name of the city, the Egyptians owe to the first rulers of the Nile from the city of Thinis in the south of the delta. They had to build a fortress at the junction of Upper and Lower Egypt, which they called Ineb Heji, or White Wall, which probably was a reference to the appearance of a fortified residence. However, the most appropriate name seems to be the one that has been used since the Middle Kingdom. That is Ankhtawi, the one who connects two countries. The term reflects the strategic position of the capital located at the junction of Upper and Lower Egypt. Although Memphis quickly turned into a metropolis, it did not lose its agricultural character. From an early age, bread and beer were the staple diet of every Egyptian. The bread was baked most often from spelt, lotus seeds, or since the Greek-Roman period, also wheat. Beer was brewed from barley and often sweetened with date molasses. Egyptians also liked to drink the milk of various origins: cow, goat, sheep, or donkey. The meat of farm animals, such as pigs, cattle, goats, and sheep, hosted on Egyptian tables much less often than the fish, in which Egypt abounded thanks to the Nile, numerous irrigation channels, and swamps. Because the Egyptian climate was difficult to cultivate vineyards, only the richest Egyptians could afford for a delicacy such as wine, which was drawn from distant vineyards, primarily from the Delta, the Fayoum Oasis, and another oasis in the Libyan desert.